My name is Suzy Rosenstein. I'm a midlife transition and possibility coach, podcast host, and author, and I am super excited to share today on Conversations with Pearl.
Hey everybody, it's Pearl Chiarenza with Women's Successful Living and Conversations with Pearl podcast. I'm so excited to have another episode today. I love bringing amazing women together, and today is no different.
Pause 1 second, Pearl. It was very choppy. The internet went out or something.
Did it go out on me? Okay, hold on.
It was. I could barely hear any of that.
Okay, hold on. Let's see. It could be here. Hopefully it's not here.
I'm not getting any notice here, so I don't
I'm not either. It's kind of weird.
Oh.
Okay, let's try it again.
It just happened when you started to talk.
Okay, so I'm going to give Dan a five. I'll just start over.
Okay.
Yep. All right. But no, you leave yours. Yours is fine. So he'll edit that out. We're good. Okay. So Dan, you're going to edit out. I'm going to do a countdown and we'll start the show again. Hey everybody, it's Pearl Chiarenza with Women's Successful Living. I'm so excited to have another Conversations with Pearl with you today. And I have an amazing guest. I love bringing amazing women together. And today is no different. Today we have Suzy Rosenstein. She is an MA in Master Certified Life Coach and host of popular podcast for Midlife Women. It's called Women in the Middle, Loving Life After 50 and Women in the Middle Entrepreneurs. Suzy knows firsthand that having the privilege to age is a gift. It sure is. She helps women 50 plus get unstuck, believe that what's actually possible is possible, and find the meaning they're looking for with confidence, courage, commitment to have fun, and pursuing it. Welcome to the show, Suzy. I'm so excited to have you today.
Thanks, Pearl. I'm so happy to be here.
Being 50, we're gonna get there. We're gonna have some fun conversations about that because I'm telling you, midlife crisis. I hear all that stuff, but just midlife is so much fun, right?
I think so. And it's interesting because I lost my job when I turned 50 and started coaching. Like that all started 10 years ago. I turned 60 last year, and it's just so easy to think about it because it was a decade.
Right. Oh my gosh. And I'm going to be 60 this year too. And I know, and it's so much fun. It's like, I never look at a number. I've never looked at that. Like, I remember growing up, my mom was like, I can't tell you how old I am. I'm like, what's the difference? And then in 2015, my oldest son, Matt, had graduated high school and all the family was in, including my mom. And my mom had fallen doing things we told her not to do. She didn't need to do them. And when she fell, she fractured her hip, which meant, of course, she had to go in the hospital. She ended up staying with us for like 6 weeks for recovery and all that fun stuff that has to happen. But her best friend was calling me and checking on my mom, right? And her best friend called and she's like, Pearl, so how old is your mom? And my mom was so silly because she's 20 years older than I am. So I always knew how old she was, right? We just kind of played a joke on her. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she's XYZ old. And she's like, really? I'm like, what do you mean? Wait a minute, Carol. My mother didn't tell you how old she is. You guys are like best friends. She's like, no, she would never tell me. And let me tell you, Suzy, when my mother found out that I had told her friend how old she was so mad. I felt like that little girl again that got caught cheating at school. She was so mad. I'm like,
wow.
Mom, age is a number. Enjoy it. Like, come on,
You know what? Now that you're telling this story, I just remembered something I hadn't thought about in ages. My grandmother also had a secret that she was older than my grandfather. And I remember somebody told me about this when we went to the cemetery to look at gravestones and to be with people.
Right.
and I remember seeing the date and I went, oh, that's interesting. And it was a big secret that she was older.
It's so fun. I think it's so funny. I think it also goes back to that generation where, you didn't ask, you were seen and not heard, all those secret things. Like, who cares? It's just a number. And, you've got so much knowledge I can learn from you is how I always often look at it. So I love we're going to be talking about some of these things and we've already opened up with these kind of fun conversations. But a lot of times, Suzy, what I love to do, and I know you guys listen, I have many guests that come on the show here and most of them don't always go do the due diligence to go check out an episode, right? And Suzy's already done that. So it was so much fun in a green room before we started. But Suzy, I always like to kind of get a feel for where are you today versus what you saw yourself as that little girl, right? We always talk about, we're little, like we want, I'm going to grow up, I'm going to be the president, I'm going to be a fire person, I'm going to have the white picket fence. We have these dreams that come to us, right? As little girls and little boys. Your dream when you were little, how does it compare to what you're doing today?
Well, it's kind of similar. Now that I'm thinking, well, the first dream was, am I going to hit 5 foot? That never happened. Are you also under 5 foot?
Funny you say that. I'm five. I take the 5 foot 1.5
Oh, you're
because
way
I've
taller
always
than me.
was 5'2", and my best friend, she was like 4.9. She was 4'9". She hated me. I'm like, I'm only like 2 inches, 3 inches taller than you. She goes, you're still taller than me.
Well, I think I used to be 4'10" and a half. I don't think I'm 4'10" and a half anymore. But anyway, it doesn't matter. So when I was the first memory I have of what I wanted to do was to be a teacher. And the reason was, I remember this so clearly in elementary school. I grew up in Pennsylvania, and we had these, those sliding walls that are like accordion, and they're big, giant blackboards. So the whole wall was a blackboard. And I thought that was so cool that teachers got to write and draw and teach on the blackboard. So I'm like, oh, yeah, I love to draw. I love to write. I want to be a teacher. So it was blackboard motivated. And then in grade 9, I remember having that project, the careers project, where you had to look something up. And what I wanted to do was to become a commercial artist. Now, I don't even know if they call it that anymore because graphic design and Canva and like it's become so accessible to people. But when I was 12, I learned how to do calligraphy and I became really addicted to it. I just couldn't stop. I was so fascinated with the letters and pen and ink and paper and all of that. So I thought that's what I wanted to do. And I never thought that I don't know, like I was always attracted after that. I wanted to focus on something that had to do with human behavior. So I remember then in my high school yearbook, I actually wrote that down. I'm fascinated by human behavior. And then if you look at what I'm doing now, what I'm doing is bringing a lot of creativity into coaching midlife women. So I've got the human behavior, the mindfulness, the all of that stuff, and people trying to figure out how to get unstuck and how to make decisions and how to be intentional, all of that. And I've brought in a lot of creativity very intentionally. I became a certified Zentangle teacher. I don't know if you know what Zentangle is. It's mindful doodling. And it's something that I teach inside my signature program. And it's just such a good way to focus and relax and really be more connected to the present moment. I found it a really great tool to have.
Wow.
So it is kind of close.
Yeah, no, and it's so funny. It's so weird. Like, okay, we've never met each other except through Zoom, and 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 so it's so weird. Like our heights, our age things we talked about, and then me too. I wanted to be a teacher growing up. Like that was my thing. I wanted to be a teacher growing up. We even had a career thing at my school, at my high school, where I would leave school early and I'd go to the elementary school and I would be a teacher's aide for the afternoon.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, it was really the coolest thing ever. But unfortunately, I didn't go that path. But like you, what I'm doing today is, the coaching. I'm able to teach and able to share and do those things that So it's such a cool transition, and to see that happen. And it's every time I ask that question, it always is so funny. I would say 90% of the time, people are doing close to what they thought they were going to do when they were younger. It's just such a cool how we have this intuition in us as little ones that we start building that sewing that DNA together, I like to call it, and going, oh, I think I want to do this, but you may not go exactly in a classroom, but you were in a
Right.
classroom in a different way. I think it's
It's so
so
true.
fun to watch how it comes about.
Yeah, like I was always noticed for being creative. And the other thing that people always made little jokes about, but I was noticed for, known for, noticed that I did this and then known for asking a lot of questions.
Mm.
And so it came up in band. So I play saxophone and I was in the whole, marching band, jazz band, concert band, all of that stuff, love band. And I always asked a ton of questions, especially in marching band, because there's a lot of things you need to know. I was a section leader with the saxophone, so I always had to make sure I was clear so that I could guide and help the other people in the saxophone section. So I was known for asking questions. And then in grad school, I focused on applied social psychology, which had to do, I was asking a lot of questions because I was using qualitative research. And so I became really good at interviewing people, long form interviewing, listening, looking for patterns of speech, all of that. And that was a skill that was used in all of my JOBs for 27 years. And then when I became a coach, I'm like, wow, look at this. I have the skill. It's really helpful. And there it was again. Oh, I can't hear you. Whoops. There we go.
There you go. It's so fun that when we can, walk into what we thought of, like I said, when we were younger, and then enjoy doing it and be like, wow, the light bulb goes off. I love when I work with women and we walk that path, like that. I call it the Shiro GPS roadmap. Where we figure out, what is it something you want to do? What is it in your life you want to do? And how do we get there? Like what are the steps we have to take? Whether it's overcoming people pleasing, like me, I was a huge people pleasing addict. And it's so funny. I teach on that as a great program that I bring into my business. And I actually I retook the test this morning. So I was like, I haven't retaken this test in a while. I want to see where I fall at. And I was like, oh, my people pleaser was so happy the affirmation came in that it's dropped, not dropped as much as I want to, but I can say I'm overcoming that. I always love to share, but I love to say, work with the women and take them through that roadmap of like, where are your saboteurs, where are your judges that are holding you back to either take care of self or grow into, the business or something that you want in your life. And to watch that growth and to watch them go, oh, I can say no as a complete sentence and show up for myself. Oh, it becomes easier, right? So as it becomes stronger in it, I love watching them get that strength built. And then they start finding that happiness of being like, you know what? It doesn't hurt to say no. And I'm not stressed out over making my kid a grilled cheese sandwich or having to do something last minute that I forgot about. Right. And then they
Definitely.
become that empowered self. Like they become empowered to do like start a business like you and I have done, maybe go speak on a stage or something that they've always kind of said, oh, when my kids grow up or when this, right. And then that whole part as the best part is we're getting near the end of the trip is to watch that radiance show up. Like they just start shining in that self that they were supposed to be. Like a lot like what you are doing. Like right now, if you guys are not watching, I mean, Suzy has this glow about herself because she's in the radiance. She's in what she wants to do in her life. Right. So now then as I drive them off and they're off on their roadmap, they're walking in life as that original person and self they want it to be. And I think
Yes.
it's so powerful that when we can find that when we're on that path to doing that, because our self-care is so important. It's my big part that I love to coach on because we're not promised tomorrow. And I live it, as some know my story that, we lost our son at 25 years old in 2022. And yeah, I could have sat in my room and sat and cried my life away and been depressed the rest of my life. But I know I still have a life to live. And I know Matt saw me and my son Nate have seen me step into this journey that I'm on. So it's like, why would I cheat myself? Because trust me, every day I wake up and I miss my son, but I can't bring him back. Life's not a remote. I can't rewind and fix anything, right? But I can continue to do the things that I love to do. And I think a lot of times what happens, and this is what I was looking forward to having you on the show about was we hit that like that middle, we talk about midlife, right? We hit that midlife and we look and we go, oh my gosh, what have I done all my life, right? Then we start beating ourselves up because we're like, I didn't do this, I didn't do that, I wanted this, I wanted that, right? We start doing these what ifs and looking back, right? So I would love to, I know we shared how, you help women, become confident and have that courage to, and have fun in midlife. What are some of the things, Suzy, that you help others do in that journey? And what are some of the things, I'm gonna ask you a two-part question. And then what's some of the things that you see the biggest challenge in embracing midlife?
Okay, you may have to remind me as we go because I might need a reminder. So the first thing is that once I got laid off, getting laid off the year I turned 50 and the year that my first kid was going to university, it really was the gift I couldn't give myself. So I started to sense I'd been stuck for 5 years, and I started to sense, yes, I said 5 years, that's 260 weeks. I started to sense that I was more fearful than I ever imagined. And so once I learned more about coaching, I ended up finding being exposed to some coaching and going through training. And of course, when you train to be a coach, your first client is yourself. So once all that stuff started to become clear, I started to see that so many midlife women don't appreciate that aging is a gift. And I hadn't really thought about it that much when I turned 50, but I lived it because I lost both my parents as a child. So I've outlived them. I have far outlived them. My mother passed when she was 32. I was only 5. My father passed when he was 41. I was 12. I am 60. They never got this far. So they did not have the privilege to age. And that realization that so many people didn't appreciate that, it really showed me that there was a problem. And the problem was starting with mindset, as all problems do. But really, I think there's so much going on with negative thoughts about aging that we are not aware of. And the one that I zone in on so much is that we like to think that we believe that the best is yet to come. We buy the magnets, we get the pillow, we might even share a quote on Pinterest. But do you really believe it? Do you really believe the best is yet to come? Or do you think the best is over? The good stuff happened already. The really good stuff is not going to happen on this side of 50. And so, as I help women explore that, all kinds of stuff comes up. And this is one of the reasons I've had 2 unbelievably shocking, amazing things that have happened to me on this side of 50 that I couldn't have even imagined. They were so out there. Would you like me to tell you one of them? Okay. So Pearl's nodding. So one,
Yes, please share.
yeah, one of them happened. I was just sitting here in this exact spot, and an email came in from a genealogy site that I had set up a family tree on before we all had internet at home. Like it was in, I think, 92. It was on a website called Genie. You know, back in the day, it was different. Internet was different then. We weren't all using it all the time. And I didn't even think that this family tree was searchable. Time changed when it's set up. I don't know. I don't think it was searchable. You had to invite people in, and it was very like a stagnant type of a thing. But I set this family tree up. So a few decades go by, and I get this email. Somebody looked me up and sent me an email that started, Suzy, we're not related, but I have something that I think you're going to want. So you can't even believe it. My heart started racing. I'm like leaning into the screen. I'm like, what is this? What's going on? And she said she inherited all of her dad's stuff. And one of the things he did was he had a metal detector, and he used this metal detector on the beaches of Rhode Island, where my mother grew up. And so I have many pictures of my mother as a teenager and as a young woman on the beaches of Rhode Island. So he retired there and he collected all this stuff. He specifically was collecting coins, but I don't know if you know, but when you use a metal detector, you find all kinds of stuff, paper clips, buttons, little charms, and coins, all kinds of stuff, bottle caps. Usually you don't find anything good. Anyway, she inherited all this stuff. So her father passed. She thinks it was that this thing I'm going to tell you about that was found she probably had it for 10 or 20 years. I don't remember the detail of that, but she had a pile of stuff in the basement. The coins were all organized, and the little stuff that was found wasn't organized. It was just in a bin or something. So during COVID, she had time to go through it, and she found something with my mother's name on it. It was a bracelet, like an ID bracelet. And my mother's name was on there. And on the reverse, it said June 51. So she went to the Google and she plugged in my mother's name, Sandra E. Senders. And this Genie website came up, this family tree. So she could see immediately that I was her daughter, that she had passed, and that I had a sister. And so she reached out and she had this bracelet. I could not believe it. I burst into tears. Like I couldn't even speak because that was 70 years in the making. Who would ever think that you're going to get a surprise like that? That was under the sand for 40 years and then in somebody's, basement. And I have it on. So what happened is she sent it to me and it had a little nameplate. It was silver and a half a chain. So I took it to the jeweler and they melted the chain into two little nameplates. And my sister and I each have one and I purchased a new I
It's
purchased a
so amazing.
new
Oh my
chain.
gosh. That is just amazing. Okay, there's so much I want to say. So I think what a gift. I mean, like to have like to have somebody, and then to think about the person who was like, okay, they found it and they've held on to it, and then the daughter comes behind. It's like somebody's gonna, somebody, and to think, I mean, when we were growing up, we didn't have internet and all this stuff, right? So how many of those stories are out there? I was thinking, wow, how cool is that you've got that, and then you were able to do something with it that gave it to your sister too. So that was like to take and forward thinking, how can we both enjoy this, right? That
Right.
was
And
so
that's it. It
beautiful.
was such an act of kindness that she took the time. So I interviewed her on my podcast, Women in the Middle, and I she told the whole story, which I should listen to again because I may have forgotten a detail or two. And I kept the original nameplate and we tried to match the engraving. And and we don't take the bracelets off. But you see
Oh,
what I mean? Like who could ever imagine that something really amazing would happen?
right.
You wouldn't even put that on the list?
Right. And you were talking earlier too about like that I was when you were talking about how we we think, oh, the best is yet to come, right? And we're not in it brought me back to my father-in-law. I had the best in-laws. My in-laws were the examples of what parents should be. They were so amazing. I met them at the young age of 19 when I met my husband, almost 40 years ago this year.
Oh,
And I mean, they're both gone, but my father-in-law, like he had diabetes and I would get so mad at him because he wouldn't eat right. He's like, I can take the shot, because he had diabetes so bad. And I mean, like even one year for Easter, I even made a ham that was safe for him to eat and a ham that was good, that wasn't safe for him to eat. And he's like, we all go to bed and he ate some of the other ham. I'm like, Dad, like, what are you doing? And I get to this day, like when I think about my boys, I get frustrated with him because he never got to see my boys because of his health reasons and choices that he made. And I think about that all the time because I lost my son 2 years ago. My younger son is getting married this October. And I'm like, here I am, hanging out with my nephew, taking care of him while my brother's going through some stuff. And it's been fun to hang out with him. And although I said to my girlfriend this morning when we were talking, I'm like, she goes, how you doing? I'm like, I'm a little tired. I haven't done the school thing in quite a long time, but I'm surviving. I said, but I'm like, she goes, and my girlfriend said, preparing you for grandchildren. I'm like, that's what I keep telling myself, So I'm looking forward to that because that's the one thing I know that my boys missed out on is because my father-in-law, he was so funny. Like he would, if you were sleeping in too late, he'd go to the piano and start playing the piano to wake you up. And he was just so much fun. And, my mother-in-law, she got to be with both my boys, till about, I think Nate was a junior in high school. So she got to spend a lot of time with them as well. And she would spend every winter with us. But as you said that, I thought, how many people think, oh, I can wait till tomorrow, or it's gonna, it's no, enjoy it now because we don't know when it's going to come. And just because, like, and the other thing that came to my mind is how many of my relatives, not so much my friends or my family, like my husband's cousins are all close to my age, and none of us think this way. But how many of my family do I watch go, oh yeah, I hit 50, I hit 60, life is over. And here I am. I'm like, I'm turning 60 this year. And I'm like, yes, what's coming next? But I mean, don't get me wrong. The reality is like, shoot, 60's here. But I can say that I lived a life that my kids will be able to be like, oh, my mom, she helped my brother's friends out. She was always there for people when they need to be. She did this for herself. She showed that there's things that they can say. It's like I like to say when I coach the women that I work with, if tomorrow, unfortunately, we don't get to have you, Suzy, and all your family can say is what they saw you do for yourself at your eulogy, if each person can't think of three things, we need to talk because that's the kind of legacy you want to leave behind. It's like what people saw you do for yourself that it also enabled you to do for others, and
Mm,
as you were
yeah.
sharing that, I was like, that's so true because oftentimes people they don't feel comfortable when they age and like, oh, life's going to get older, and I think it's so powerful. I call it the second act. Like, what's your second act going to be like? I always think about these two ladies. I think it was early episodes of Shark Tank. I had a weight loss clinic back about 10, 12 years ago, and I saw these ladies. They were called ice chips. Okay. So these ladies, these two sweet ladies, were sitting on their front porch and they said they were walking, their friends are doing crochet, and they're like, we don't want to crochet the rest of our lives. Let's create something. So they took what we call xylitol, and they I think it was xylitol. They took it and they melted it down, right? And they're like, you can't do anything with that. And they said, yeah, I know. What are we going to do with this? They put flavors in it. They thought maybe somebody can suck on it, but you can't suck on a whole chunk of this block, right? So they happened to take like a hammer and just went bam on the hammer, and it broke up into chips. And they called it ice chips. And you could suck on it. I think it had stevia in it. You could suck on it, and it gave you a sweet craving get away. And that was their business they started. They ended up selling the business. It grew greatly. I don't even know if they're still here anymore, but I was like, that's what we need to be doing. Like, just because life is, I'm not working anymore, I'm retired, doesn't mean I have to sit around and do nothing. I can travel. I can, do all these things. There's so much to come. And I don't know what your thoughts on that.
Well, this is it. Like if you just imagine that you really believed that the best was yet to come. You really believed it. All
Yeah.
of a sudden things open. But we have so many of us don't really believe it, but don't appreciate that we don't believe it. And it's just so limiting. It's just always there. Things are a little grayer,
Right.
because you're not really believing.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
no downside to really believing that the best is yet to come, because really, if you're not here, that means you're dead.
Right. Yeah, your dash is over, and I want to live my
That's it.
dash. That's what I tell everybody. I want to, I think too, I think about people when they get to a certain age, they're like, well, so all my kids are grown, and they all these things they tell themselves. It's like, just because your kids are grown doesn't mean life's done. You go enjoy doing something. And I love that you talk about mindset, because mindset is it's true. People are like, I've even had my kids when they were younger. Oh, Ma, you and that thought stuff. I'm like, there's a lot to say about it. Even with my brother, with what he's going through. I'm like, brother, I
Mm.
need you to think positive. I think, you're going to get through this. Everything's going to work out the way it's supposed to, And so it's like, it really is like when you can sit down and like, I have a great meditation coach that I love to do meditations with. She actually writes personal meditations for you. And when she gives me stuff and tells me I have to write it, when I start doing it 3 times a day, I'm like, oh yeah. You start really believing it. Your brain starts going, oh yeah, this is going to happen. And then all of a sudden things start happening, right?
There's a shift. There's a
Yeah,
definitely a shift. Yeah, exactly. Because I think it's so easy to think that the thoughts are like just things that happen in our life, that we don't have a lot of options
right,
about how we're going to interpret the things that are happening. And the things that we interpret, those interpretations, those sentences, those thoughts or phrases, those beliefs, that's what's making us feel the way we feel.
right,
So it's so easy not to connect the two. A lot of times I think it's easier to kind of notice the feeling and then be curious, wow, I wonder why I'm feeling this way.
right.
But
So
we do have some power there. We can be curious about what we're thinking. We can ask ourselves why we're thinking it. We can decide, what, am I okay with thinking that? Do I like the reasons I'm thinking that? I can see how it's affecting me. So you do have more options. Like
right,
you don't have to believe that aging's bad. You don't have to believe that it's skippity doo dah and it's always going to be easy peasy, but you can be open to the idea that aging can be challenging and it can be amazing. I love adding,
yeah.
right? It could be both.
As you're talking, I'm thinking about like when we were in our 20s, life, we didn't think life was so easy. Oh, I got to go do this adulthood, right? And then you get married and or have kids. That's not easy. But my granny. I think about her when my dad was in the service. We used to go stay with my granny, and I remember her talking about, oh, I'm getting so old. I'd be like, Granny, you're only as old as you feel. You don't, and, she's like, well, I feel 60, something, whatever. I was like, and people will say to me, how old are you? I'm like, well, my clock says I'm 60, but I really don't feel like I'm that. I feel like I'm like in my 40s still. I feel like I'm stuck in my 40s, and people look at me, they'll hear me talk or something, they go, you're going to be 60. I'm like, yeah, it ain't cool. I just think it's like, let me embrace it. I can't change it, but it doesn't mean I can't keep living and doing the things I love to do.
Well, and the other thing about that is like, who says that 60 has to be this way or that way? Like, why do we even think that? Sitcoms from the 70s, right? We grew
Yep.
up thinking that things needed to be. I think I'm way too silly to be 60, but even that's a thought. Why can't 60-year-olds be silly?
Right.
There's nothing
Right.
wrong with it.
Yeah, who says I have to be serious? I love it. I'm watching over your shoulder 50 ways to celebrate life after 50. I think that's so cool. And we're gonna put links in there so people can get it. But tell us what are some of your top 5 things out of the 50 you like to do?
Okay, well, let me just start with the way I think about the ways to celebrate, and then we'll kind of get in there. I'll tell you, we're going to end up talking about birds and whales. I'll just give you a little tip there. But I divide the 50 ways into 6 categories of celebration. And the whole point is to get unstuck, avoid regrets, and live your best life, right? That's the bottom line. So the one way is to celebrate your age, which we've talked about already. So to start to think about age means life, another trip around the sun. You had a birthday. Yay. Better than not having a birthday, right? So, really thinking about that and thinking about age as an opportunity to celebrate, that's something. Celebrating self care is something that's super important when you can get to the point that you are very open to taking care of yourself and that you feel that you think that you deserve to take care of yourself and that you don't struggle with finding time to take care of yourself and that you allow yourself to be happy taking care of yourself. All of those things. That's an area to celebrate. Another thing is celebrating your passions. So, things that you really love to do. Can you allow yourself the resources, the time to spend time doing those things? Or does it feel too indulgent? Can you allow yourself to really lean into that stuff and celebrate? Also, celebrating your relationships. This is so important. There's all kinds of research that shows that meaningful relationships are the things that keep you, happier and happier and healthier longer, right? So celebrating your relationships, what I did for my 50th birthday, all I wanted to do was to finally take a vacation with my best friend. All the times we visited over the years, she always lived someplace else. We would just go and visit at each other's homes, but we never took a vacation, like where we went someplace else and explored new things together. So, relationships, all kinds of relationships, they're a reason to celebrate and to be more intentional about. Another one is celebrating your professional self, the way you make a professional contribution. It doesn't need to be a career, it could be a volunteer gig, it could just be the way you show up sometimes in a helping capacity as a mentor. But you can really celebrate that stuff and just trust that you've got skills, your wisdom is really useful to other people, and that is a cause for celebration, something to make time for, something to be intentional about. And then the last one is to celebrate your empty nest. If you've got kids, my kids are always like, sorry, this little thing just popped into my head. But one time my kid was flying somewhere and I'm like, don't forget to text me when you get there. And he looks at me, they're in their 20s. I'm like, yeah, you have to do that. I still do it. So you gotta just do it. But celebrate that empty nest. Start to really work on the way you're thinking about this phase in your life, about the relationships that could be at the beginning. You could have early relationships with your young adults versus my being a mom phase is over. It's not over. It's just shifting to you developing a relationship with your young adults. And this period of life is longer than the 18, 20, 22 years that they were living in your home with you. So those are all the things. So some of the ways I love to celebrate, I make a stink about birthdays. I do. I have a habit that I started that my uncle he came up with it, and I love it so much. I've talked about it a lot on my podcast, and I talk about it a lot in my community. And it's the top 10 days of the year. So it's a way to celebrate age, the passage of time, and New Year's Eve or the lead up to New Year's. And you could do whatever else you want if you want to make resolutions, but it's nice to think about the top 10 days that you had in the last year, to write them down, to think about them, and to note the people that you had them with. And then thank those people by sending them an email. And so when my uncle does this, sometimes, often I'll get one. I'll get one of these little notes, an email or a text, and it says, I just want to let you know that you made one of my top 10 days this year. We celebrated it together. Ah, it is just so lovely. So I love that as a way to celebrate. And I guess the passion thing I really care about. I really care about recognizing what really turns your crank, what really turns you on. For me, it's whales. Whale watching. I'm a whale watching fanatic. I'll go out of my way to plan a vacation on some ocean so that I have an opportunity to see whales, to photograph whales, to learn about whales, and just to be out in the ocean with other people who love whales and everything else going on. When you're outside the ocean like that, I love it. My first whale watch happened in 1985 in Kennebunkport, Maine. I've been all over the place. I've probably been out, I don't know, 50 times. My favorite place to whale watch is how I celebrated my 60th birthday. So I asked myself, what is something I really, really want to do that lights me up so much so that I tear up thinking about it? Now, I wanted to share that with you because something that lights you up is not as clear as what the kind of information you're going to get when you tag on that you get a little teary, that you get emotional thinking about it. So, what came up for me immediately when I thought about that was a trip I took in 92. And it was to Baja, California, in Mexico. And there's this amazing gray whale experience in San Ignacio Lagoon where you're in a tent in this wildlife sanctuary park and you're in the middle of nowhere and you're out with, on these 20-foot boats with other whale watch fanatics for, I think it was 4 days. And it's not just going out for an hour or two, you're out for 3.5, 4 hours twice a day. And it's amazing. And I'm like, that's what I need to do. And I'm not even going to ask my husband about it because he'll go whale watching with me on a 3-hour tour, but he doesn't need to do that. Just like I don't need to go on a ski vacation anymore. I'm done with that. So that's one of my passions. Another one of my passions is everything to do with birds. And it's not that I'm super duper knowledgeable about birds, like a bird watch, like a real bird watcher who's like super into it. But I have an app called Merlin, which helps you identify bird sounds. So if you love birds, download this app. It's amazing. You just take it outside, you hear a bird tweeting, you press record, and it records it and it tells you what it is. It's amazing. It's super fun. So it's not just that I do that. We have a really great bird feeder and we really try to attract the birds. And a bird bath just lights me up. It is so much fun. I have seen 11 birds in my bird bath having a great time. And I just think that's delightful. The squirrels, the chipmunks, the bees, they all use the bird bath. And honestly, I think about it a lot in the summer. I'm in Toronto, so in the winter, it's not as much fun, but we do have a lot of birds in the winter still. But those things, and you can get that Merlin app, you can download a different pack for it when you're traveling, and you can identify birds wherever you are. So one of my sons got into it. He was in Peru recently, and while he was in a tent, he turned it on and he's like, oh, look what's happening. Because, it was just so much fun. So those are two things I really love to celebrate. And I like to think of this concept called amplifying. Again, my uncle taught me this. But when you are having something good going on, I would like you to be challenged to make it even better, to amplify the good experience and challenge yourself. How can I make this better? How can I be more focused? How can I be more present? How can I ask a question? How can I start a conversation? How can I just really appreciate the awe and wonder? And amplify whatever it means to you to amplify, do it. And it'll really elevate, it'll just raise everything for you and make it more sparkly and amazing. So those are just a couple things. I could go on, but what's coming up for you, Pearl, as I'm talking about some of
Oh,
this?
oh my gosh. I'm hearing like amplify. Like that just like stuck out to me just now. And then, the part about what lights you up, because oftentimes, like what you said, we do things that light us up and make us happy, bring us joy, all those things. But to think about like what makes you cry, like what brings a tear to your eye. It's like, I thought about going on a cruise with my husband. Like I love doing that. That just brings so much joy. And like I could tear up thinking about the cruises we've taken together. I think that that's just, those are the two big things that came to my mind while you're sharing that. And I've always wanted to go whale watching. So anytime you want a partner, let me know. And the funny thing about me wanting to whale watch and me talking about cruises, you're going to laugh. I can't swim. I live in Florida. I used to be
Oh
on a
my
swim team
gosh.
when I was a kid and I almost drowned and my parents didn't make sure I got back in the water. So ever since then, I will get in the water as long as I can touch the ground, right? But people laugh. They go, you go on cruises? You don't mind? I go on my friends' boats all the time. I'm like, they're like, you're in the middle of the ocean, Pearl. You could just fall. I go, don't say it. I believe what I think and I think I'm not going to fall off the boat. So,
Well,
so
you know what's so interesting about that? One of the women, when I went back to this place that I had been dreaming about for 30 years, one of the women that came with me, three women came with me, and they all had challenges they wanted to go overcome. And one of them was to be in open water like that.
oh, wow, that's amazing.
Very afraid. And then there she was in a fishing boat. It
In
was
open water.
unbelievable. But the specific thing that made me tear up was something that happened that first time I went. A big giant gray whale was under the boat. They're about 40 or 50 feet. And they're long, they're big, very big. And we're in a very low boat.
Right.
And so this whale came under the boat and she rolled. And her eye was, I don't know, 12, 18 inches from mine. I was leaning over looking at her and she was looking at me. And then she blinked and I
Oh,
lost it. I
oh
lost
my
my mind.
gosh.
I lost
I
my
just
mind.
just thinking about that, I was like, wow, that's so cool. I
It's
just that's so beautiful.
and I got a picture of it. I got a pic. I don't know how I did because I was like crying and the boat was moving. But there were several really kind of spiritually moving,
Yeah, I think they're just such beautiful animals. I mean, they're just
unbelievable.
mammals. They're just so beautiful. And I love whenever I go to the beach in Florida and I see the dolphins and things like that. It's just it's so calming and just so beautiful. The other thing I thought about while you're sharing is like relationships. You touched on relationships and you touched on relationships with our adult children. And I never thought about it in the way you put it, that you know, we tend to have them, we hope to have them longer than they were adults. Unfortunately, like I have both examples. Unfortunately, I
Yeah,
don't
you
have that with
do.
Matthew, but it's so true. But the thing I can say that I love that we did was building relationship, because I started doing things like I learned from a friend when I lived in Virginia. I would see him out with like one of his kids, like at least once or twice a week. I would see him with one or, his kids individually. And so I decided that that's something I want to do with my kids. So I created moments with them that we could do things, right? And
Mm,
so like Matthew, and it grew into, if they started having things on their mind, like with Matthew, would be like, "Hey mom, do you want to go for sushi?" Because then I knew he wanted to talk to something, about it, because sushi was our love language together, right?
I
And
love
and
that.
and
Yeah.
Nate's is movies and stuff. And Nate, like a couple weeks ago, we got together for lunch. I'm like, "Hey, can we go have lunch? We haven't connected, in a little bit. I'd like to just, he's getting married, he's planning a wedding. I just wanted to check in on him, right?" So I love that you touched on that relationships and with our adult kids too, because yes, I still text. I still, my son will go on business trips. Like, "Did you get there okay?" "Yes, mom, I'm here okay." It's like, "I'm still your mom. I'm sorry. I'm gonna, like even my husband, he's on a plane right now coming here. I texted before, "Did you take off okay?" "Yep." So, and when you and I get done, he should be at his layover. So I'll be like, "Are you landed?" So it's those relationships that we build, I think, to
Well,
to remember that.
but Pearl, I'm so glad you mentioned that because you lived it. You nothing's guaranteed. There's no certain.
No.
And so if you have looming empty nest and you are really bumming out about it, it means like, what are you thinking? Are you thinking, I don't know who I am? Or are you
Mhm.
thinking my relationship with my kid is over? Or are you thinking that this part of my life is over? And then to compare that with you, who's somebody you've dealt with the death of a child,
Yeah.
that's over.
Yeah.
The way you communicate with your kid, that's very different, you
Right.
know?
Yeah. And it's so is. And that's one of the things, like one of the things that we do in July, the month that Matt actually passed 2 weeks after his birthday. So his July is his coming and leaving, physically dates. But one of the things that we decided to do, because what we found was about a week to 2 weeks after Matt passed, we had some of his friends show up at our door trying to, come see Matt because he was in between leaving our house and moving in with his girlfriend. Or I call it a God thing. Somehow or another, his phone number got tagged to my phone number. And so I would get these random texts like, "Hey, how you doing? I haven't talked to you in a while." I'm like, "Oh, I'm fine. Who is this, please?" And they're like, "Oh, I thought this was Matthew." So they're trying to reach my son. So then we have to let them know on the other end, "Oh, Matt's not here." We're kind of reliving. And so we decided that nobody should have to do that. So we created what's called Make the Call for Matt. So every July, I mean, it doesn't mean it just has to be July, but we want to focus on that in July. And if you're listening to us or watching us and somebody comes to your mind, do it right now. Is that person you think about that you haven't called in a while, they're on your mind. Oh, I gotta call so and so or go see so. Go do it now. And don't make it a text, like pick up the phone and call me. Hey, you're on my mind, just thinking about you. Because to watch, like one of Matt's friends, I guess they'd had a disagreement and he was stopping by to sort of like rectify that disagreement. And it was so hard to watch him go, man, I almost stopped by here such and such day and I didn't, right? And so we poured in them and let them know. But it's life is short, like you said. And I really want those that are listening and create the relationships you have now, because just because they're becoming adults doesn't mean that it's ending. Like it's just a different journey now that they're on. And you can always be there. Like right now, this is no lie. We care so much about our kids and the circle of their friends that at my house right now, Suzy, are three of my son's best friends that are hanging at my house watching my dogs while we are both away in Nevada right now.
Oh
So
my
so
gosh.
that those are the real we talk about relationships. Those are the relationships that we've created for, not just our boys, but their extended friends, to make sure they all knew that, hey, we're the safe space if you need to come talk or whatever. But that's so powerful because I watched some of them not have relationships with their parents that they, I would love, to have. So I love that you remind us that relationships ties into, and like you said too, just because you're empty. Like, what are you thinking around empty nesting? It just means nobody's living in your house now all the time with you, but you can still talk to them. You can still do things with them. And guess what? You can walk around naked around your house now if you want to, is how I say.
Oh my gosh, a friend told me a story like that the other night. She said that she realized the light was on somewhere. So she just stepped out and went to turn on the light. And then she ran back into her bedroom because she forgot that one of her sons was visiting. She got so used to it.
Oh,
And it's
so
funny, I
fun.
had a conversation last week. There were a few of us together from the neighborhood, and it was a really fun conversation. And nobody's unhappy about empty nest.
Yeah, I
I mean,
do
many
I
people are, but in my circle, in this conversation, and I'm going to be empty nest for, I'm pretty sure it's the first time. I think in COVID, I may have been empty nest for a little while, but then everybody came home during COVID. Yeah,
right.
but I've got, it will be an actual empty nest for 8 months. And then there's a situation where it won't be for a couple more months.
Right.
But yeah, that's the first time for that amount of time. And
I
there are
think
so many ways you can think about it.
yeah, there's so many ways you could think about it. And like you said, like we always told our kids, hey, home is always your landing space. If you need to come home, just walk in the door. You don't have to ask, right? And that's what we created with them. But we also create the way that they can bounce forward in life. And we can still bounce forward to the next chapter of our life and not feel like we've missed out on anything or, miss, stuff like we have regrets or whatever. I mean, I just look at as it empty nester as I just don't have kids in my house, but I'm still nesting and enjoying my life. I'm still building what I want to build.
And you're still a mom.
Yeah, I'm still. Oh yeah, never. I mean, that's what I tell me. I'm
You're
always a
always a mom.
mom.
You're
Yeah,
always a mom.
yeah,
It doesn't matter what's happened. You're
yep,
always a mom.
yep. That's so true. Oh my gosh. So I'm looking at the clock. We've had so much fun. Like,
What? Are we finished
yeah,
already?
we're just about there. So I want tell everybody, Suzy, we'll put everything's going to be in the show notes and everything, but tell everybody like what's the best way they can reach out to you? And I think, did you have a free, I think you had something you wanted to
Yeah,
give to everybody. So
yeah,
share that as
definitely.
well.
Okay, so I want to say one thing before I forget. So again, if I may forget anyway. Okay, so I use something in my work called a fun path to freedom method. And what it's really about, because I'm a causal coach, I'm really getting at the reasons that things are happening. So the first thing we need to do in the fun framework, F stands for finding your thoughts. So I help my clients find their thoughts and listeners to the podcast. And then we need to understand, you need to understand what it is that you want. So many midlife women are very disconnected from what they want for a variety of reasons. So once you find your thoughts, it's much easier for you to figure out what you want. And then you need to nurture your commitment to yourself. And that's where it gets a little tricky because you need to actually commit to your plan. You need to start planning stuff and then commit to your plan. And you need to allow yourself to be happy doing that. So you got to come up with the confidence and you need to believe that you're worth it and that it is part of self-care to be intentional like that. So that's the kind of stuff that we work on. We have a lot of fun doing it. So to get a hold of me, best place is just to go to my website at www.suzyrosenstein.com. That's Suzy rosenstein.com. And I have a freebie. It's kind of like a way to get into the podcast. And so I've put together 12 great episodes, the top secrets to fall in love with your life again. And so when you go to freepodcastbundle.com, you'll get this and they're all pulled together. And it's just an easy way to start listening to the podcast.
So like I said, we'll put everything in the show notes and everything so they can find that for you. So Suzy, I normally I don't have my cards today because normally on my show I have my cards and I travel from Tampa to Cali to help my brother out. And so I forgot my cards at home. They're in transport now because I have a couple more episodes, but I wanted to ask you this question. We're gonna normally I pull the shuffle the cards and Suzy gets to pick a card, but we're gonna ask the question. And I think I know the answer to it with regards to Suzy, but are you where you want to be in your life today?
Oh, what a
And
good question. Some parts yes and some parts no. You know, there are some things I think I'm doing really well. And there are some things I am not where I want to be. So in terms of my business, there are some things I still want to do. I think I'm very proud of what I've done being an entrepreneur at this age, dealing with technology. I have a signature program called Women in the Middle Academy. I still do some private coaching, and I love what I'm doing. I've never felt more creative and more fulfilled. I'm just so content. It feels so right doing what I'm doing. So I'm very much in that area. But, you know, there's a couple of self-care things I'm still working on. I'm really working on sleep. I am a new I'm new to wearing a CPAP and it's only been a couple of months. And when I turned 60, I went for a physical and I started to think, okay, let's really look at some of these things. And I'm like, you know what? A CPAP is an easy way to work on my health versus some of the treatments and things that people have to do to work on their health. So I'm like, I can do that. Yes, it's weird. Yes, there's things like all over the place. My husband wears one too. It's hilarious. Anyway, so there's that. And I really want to figure out a way to keep moving my body and exercising in a way that fits where I'm at right now. Like I have some back pain and stuff, so I can't do certain things. I was tap dancing and with the back stuff and my some foot problems, I can't do that anymore. So you have to keep figuring out, okay, well, what can I do that I really like and it's going to hold my motivation? So I would say there are some things going really well in my life and my business. And of course, there's still some things to work on because it is lifelong learning. So yeah, I'm looking forward to making those improvements too.
yay, I love your honesty because if you know, and I knew you would be the perfect person for that question because you're very genuine, your honesty, and you're very open and like we all have different things in our health and everything that comes up. The CPAP, that I have many family members and that have those too. They kind of make fun of it a little bit time when they go to bed. Some
It's
of them like
hilarious.
some of them are you are like married to their spouse. They're like, yeah, the sex is really funny with the CPAP. I just like go, I don't want to vision that. Please don't let
You
me
know what
vision
else is
that.
funny? Just wearing your reading glasses around the CPAP. Like the one I have goes over and I'm like, where are my reading glasses going to go? Between that and the pillow under my legs and like
Oh,
there's
I love
things
it. It's
going
so
on.
fun.
It is
I think it's so
hilarious.
fun. Well, I think, you probably should make some time to come to our pajama retreat we do every year because you could get some time away and, some of that self-care you talked about. We could do some yoga on the beach.
Oh
We
wow.
have
Tell
we
me,
have
you'll have to
photography
tell
on
me
the beach.
more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so every September, so our next one's coming up in September. So for those of you that are listening, I didn't know we were going to talk about this, but we're going to plug it right in right now. That is our eighth annual Soulful Self-Care Pajama Retreat. I started these retreats because I went to an event and I saw so many professional women talking about work stuff, like balance around work. But I'm like, we need balance around home life and work, right? So
Mm.
I decided let's do a pajama retreat and then it's no makeup the entire weekend, no makeup in your PJs. Yes. Thursday, when you arrive on Thursday, we do a whole process to remove makeup. And I tell everybody it's the best, easiest packing trip ever because you can go back home with what you wear to arrive and you'll have PJs all the rest of the day, right? And you're going to do yoga on the beach. You're going to have some amazing self-care activation things that we do. We have some breakout sessions. We've got great speakers for the weekend.
What a cool
And
idea.
it's so much fun, and everything is included except for your transportation. So your room, your board, everything, your food's all included in it. So it's a lot of fun. So if you want, those that are listening, if you want to learn more, just go to wslivingretreats.com. It's wslivingretreats.com, and all the information's there. It's a blast. It's our eighth one, so we're really
Wow.
excited. We expect 24 women all total.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's
it's going to be
amazing.
awesome.
Very
Yeah.
creative. Love
Thank
it.
you. Thank you. So, Suzy, I had so much fun with you. This was such a blast. You guys make sure you go and connect with Suzy, get all the information in the show notes, as she said, and grab that freebie because it sounds like it's going to be a blast. And I just want to remind everybody that you come into this world on the outside. You are a little rough on the outside, but as you open up that oyster inside, you have a beautiful pearl. And I want you to go find your beautiful pearl today. Have an amazing rest of your day.